Welcome to another exciting video in this tutorial, which is a free preview tutorial on udemy.com. Now, some of you may be watching this on YouTube, and I welcome you as well. But if you're using Udemy, which I highly suggest you do for training videos, is Udemy has a great system, and I have some free videos on udemy.com that explain how to actually use Udemy, which means you can take notes, you can download your files, you can ask your instructor questions, etc., etc., etc. You can rate the course, you can share it, etc., etc. With social media. You can tell people about your learning experience. So in this particular lesson, I'm going to share with you my techniques for adding a custom slideshow to an existing web page. Now, we're going to be using three programs for this. We're going to be using Dreamweaver for the actual page itself. We're going to be using Fireworks, one of my favorite graphics programs for the web, not Photoshop. Photoshop's a great tool, but it's not a web tool. Fireworks is built from the ground up to be a web tool. It's much more simplistic, and it has tools built into it that Photoshop does not have. Now, Photoshop is great for image manipulation, color correcting, doing things for After Effects, and of course print production. It's the industry standard. But for the web, it's lacking. I don't like Photoshop for the web. I like Fireworks or Illustrator for grid layout. Now, in addition to that, of course, we're going to be using Adobe Edge. Now, for those of you that don't have Adobe Edge is a free piece of software for now, and I think it will be probably for the rest of the year. So you can just go to adobe.com and download your version of Adobe Edge. So let's get started. Okay, so what we have here is an existing site that the client decides to add a slideshow. Now, we're going to add a slideshow that has the full width capabilities, which means it takes up the entire width of the page. This particular page has to be 960 pixels, which is actually set into percentages. So one of the first things you'd have to do, which I highly suggest you do, which I've already done, is save this version as a different version. The last thing you want to do is interfere with that version, because the client could say, you know what, we're not going to put a slideshow on this page. And then you basically did all that work for nothing. So always leave yourself out by having different versions, or at least a backup copy of the original that you can go and repost if needed. So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, we're going to put a div tag for a container tag after this particular app menu, which is basically called Site Nav. Now, we can do this a variety of ways. Now, if you want to stay away from code, here's a simple way to do this, meaning that I don't want to actually physically go to the code to actually do this. So we can do this by proxy with a div tag and then convert that div tag to a section tag or a fig container tag, etc., etc. We're just going to use a simple section tag for this, but there are a variety of different HTML5 tags you can use for this. I'm going to choose to do a section tag, which is HTML compliant. And the section tag is going to be 960 pixels wide. Now, what we're going to have to do in Fireworks is resize our images. I have season tickets to Yankee Stadium, and every year I go to almost every game, and I shoot tons and tons and tons of photos. So I'm going to shoot photos that I have the right to use, as opposed to copyright infringement with other photos that I may not have the right to use. So pay no attention to the photos as far as what they have to do with the site. It's just the understanding behind doing it. You can use whatever photos you want. So the first thing we need to do here is insert a div tag after the site nav. Now, for those of you that are new to Dreamweaver, I'm going to share with you my techniques for letting Dreamweaver do the heavy lifting for you. Now, if you're not working in classic mode, I highly suggest that you go to classic mode, because it makes the whole user interface and experience much more enjoyable and easier to comprehend. And I like easy. Now, to addendum that statement, my courses are the techniques are very sophisticated, but they're sophisticated in their simplicity, because I keep things so incredibly simple that literally I can take somebody off the street. If you can point and click a mouse and listen to my words, I will share with you how to do things the right way. So let's get started with this. Okay, so what I need to do here is come right over here. This is under not common, but layout. Under the layout tab is insert div, insert div tag. Now, there's nothing to select here. So what we're going to do is click this insert div tag. Then, how all software works. All software is based on a series of menu choices, dialog boxes, choices, keyword choice. So based on this choice here, where do I want to put that new div tag? Well, we're going to put that based on this choice after a tag. After which tag? Well, based on these choices, after the site navigation. And we're simply going to call that what it is, which is slide show. Now, what I typically do with naming IDs is I'm going to basically call this slide show with a capital S. This is called camel casing. Now you can put spaces in the names of your IDs, but you can put hyphens, but I prefer to basically do what's called camel casing, which is an old programmer's technique. You basically capitalize the second, third, fourth word. So if this was called my slideshow, I would capitalize not the M, but the slide in the show. Okay, so enough of that. So we're going to hit OK. Now what that did, it put the div tag exactly where we needed to put it. Now, technically, officially, we don't really have to do anything to this div tag as far as making a rule, because it will actually respond to the height and width of whatever we place inside of here. So since the parent tag this is the wrapper tag, okay, it actually defaults to the width of the wrapper tag itself, which in this particular case is 960 pixels. But here's what I want to do. Okay, this is okay that this text is here as a placeholder. That's fine for now. But I want to basically select the tag, and I want to change its properties from a div property tag, which is still usable, by the way, in HTML5, but I want to make this more HTML5 friendly by making this into a section tag. So I'm going to do this by hitting Command T. Command T is quick tag editor. If you look at some of my other free videos on Udemy, you will see that. Now, I'm not going to change the ID name because I'm going to keep that in place. I'm simply going to double click here and replace that word with section. Now, notice as I start typing, see it's available to me right here. I can simply hit the return key once, twice. Now, for those of you that have friends, or if you're a programmer yourself and you're like, well, why are you doing all this stuff in Dreamweaver? You should be writing the code. Well, guess what, guys and gals? That's what Dreamweaver does. Dreamweaver writes code. It writes the code for you on the back end, but you don't have to go and touch this code. I can't tell you how many very expensive, in fact, last year, 6 to 7, six-figure sites, seven-figure I wish, six-figure sites that I built totally inside of Dreamweaver using jQuery, PHP, all based on simple click point. Now, for the code that Dreamweaver does not write with a menu, Dreamweaver has built-in code hinting for that as well, which that's a whole nother subject. So basically I have here a slideshow container div tag. So now I want to move on to resizing my photos. So I'm on my desktop, and these are the photos that we have to resize. Now, I'm probably, after looking through these, I can just double click this and open up this file. This is Yogi Berra and Whitey Ford from Old Timers Day last year. Now again, pay no attention to the content. The objective here is we're going to take these rather large files and knock them down to 960 wide and 300 pixels high. And we're going to use a production tool, Fireworks, to do this for us, which is really a cool thing. So here's what you want to be able to do. I'm going to first of all just take this. I'm going to right click this. I can either do a right click or a control click in Macintosh, and I'm going to open this up with Fireworks. Now if I double click this by default, it's going to open up inside a preview. Now I could do one of two things. I can drag the file to my dock, or I could basically just right click or control click and open it up in the program I'm going to open up in, which in this particular case is Fireworks. Okay, now here's what we need to do first. We need to set up what's called a command. So as an example, these are a list of built-in commands that Fireworks ships with. Well, I'm sorry, yes, Fireworks, not Firefox. Duh. What we're going to do is make our own set of commands and then batch process to meet these commands. Now, again, if you're going to do this, there's no magic way of recropping, because I can choose to recrop from a certain part of the picture. What I'm going to do is recrop from the top left-hand corner. Some of the photos might get cut off, but again, that would be some hand tweaking later on. So there's no simple magic way to do this. So the first thing we're going to do here, of course, is go to the modify, changing is modify. Now, if you worked in Photoshop, this program works sort of identical to how Photoshop thinks and Photoshop works. This is a vector-based program, so actually Fireworks gives you the best of both worlds. It's Illustrator-like, but also works fluently with Photoshop files. In fact, I can seamlessly open up a Photoshop file directly from Fireworks, but you get the best of both worlds. So based on these choices, we're going to go to image size. Now, the first thing we're going to do here, and anything for the web should have a resolution no greater than 72 dots per inch. Now, for those of you out there who are not really keen to that, You want better quality. Well, you can't get better quality by increasing the resolution because the computer screen, whether it's a tablet, desktop device, iPhone, iPad, Android, can only show you 72 dots per inch or 72 pixels per inch. It's basically the same thing. So what I'm going to do is basically take this and make this 960. Now, I want to keep this proportionate. So I have to proportionalize the pixels first, say that 10 times fast, and then crop the document. So I'm going to hit OK. So there's my resized document. Now to make this a little bit more visibly enjoyable, what I'm going to do first of all, I'm just going to make this window bigger and hit Control on Windows, Command Macintosh 0, not Command O. I'm not opening a file, I'm fitting in Window. That shortcut works in pretty much all Adobe products. Command O fits in Window. Control, I just said that. Command 0, not Command O would open. Command 0 fits in Window. Control 0 for Windows. So what that did, that put the image resize, and in a second from this history palette. Now if your history palette's not up there, it's under Window, Histories. Now, if you want to, you can be in, I'm just going with my basic standard mode for this, so don't jump through hoops here. So the next thing we're going to do is crop this. So I'm going to go to my C, letter C for cropping tool, similar to being in Photoshop. I'm going to do the C key for cropping tool. And I'm just going to drag this across the page. And this is 960 pixels wide, great. I'm going to hit the Tab key, and I'm going to basically make that 300 pixels wide. So I've hit the return key once, twice, it crops the image. And again, notice that it did, in this particular case, crop out part of the image. And in this particular case, that's fine because this is more of an exercise, not I don't want to make this a museum piece. Now, the important part as far as what I did is I can now take these three steps that I just did, image size, deselect, crop the image, and I can now come down here and turn that into a command. So if I click right here, this will save steps as a command. So I'm going to click right there, and I would pretty much call this what it is. So I'm going to call this 960 by 200, resize, crop, or anything that makes sense to you. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, as an example, to share with you that that in fact does work, I'm going to go to the File menu, revert to the last saved version, which brings us back to where we started. Control 0 fits into Command 0 Macintosh, Control 0 for Windows. Now I could simply go to the Commands menu, and there's my custom command that I just made. Now, if you make a mistake or typo, you need to edit this, then based on these choices, I can go and manage my saved extensions. So I can rename it, I can delete it, I can do whatever I want with it here. Now you can't readjust what it's doing, but you can rename it if you made a typo. Okay, so based on these choices, we're simply going to go down and resize, crop, image. And there you go, just like that. Control or Command 0 fits in Window. Now, I'm going to close this file, because next we're going to basically batch process this file. Now, I cannot overemphasize, say that times 5 times fast. I can't overemphasize how incredibly cool Fireworks is and enjoyable it is to use with web graphics. It basically is built from the ground up for the past, almost now going on 20 years. I think 93, 94 is when it first came out, Fireworks for the web. But it was built from the ground up to be a web tool, and keep in mind it was also Macromedia's tool. So it was kind of a direct competition of Photoshop. But again, Photoshop's a great tool, but not for web graphics. For comps and stuff, it's Illustrator for me. For web graphic manipulation, things like that, it's definitely Fireworks. Also, Fireworks works great. Fireworks has a built-in command line that will basically export your graphics to Adobe Edge, which is really kind of cool. Now, that's a third-party extension that's free, and I will share with you in a subsequent video how to get that. Now, if you're not part of my all-access course, I highly suggest you sign up for that. If you're unlimited budget, then just sign up for 1 or 2 of my courses. They're not going to break the bank. I'm here to help you every step of the way. So whether or not you're a student of mine for a free course or a premium paid course, you can still ask me questions. I have just as much interest in helping you as anybody else. So thank you very much. So let's continue. All right, so what we're going to do now, based on these choices, we're going to go to the File menu, and we're going to say Batch Process. Now, the batch processing capabilities inside of Fireworks is really kind of cool, because what it will do, it's kind of dummy-proof as far as it's not going to ruin your original file. So I'm going to double-click here. I'm going to go to my website. I'm going to go to the folder that I put the files in. And based on these choices, I put it in a folder called For Edge Original. So I'm going to double-click that. Now, I could go through these one by one, and if I preview these up here, I can basically just pick the ones that I want to batch process. But in this particular case, I'm just going to say Add All based on these choices. So I click there. Next, I'm going to hit Next. Okay, now here's what I want to be able to do. Okay. If in fact you wanted to rename them 960 wide with the prefix whatever, you could do that by clicking here and moving this over. But based on these choices, what we want to do is initiate a command. So I'm going to scroll this down, and if I scroll down to the bottom, there is my command for crop and resize. We're going to add that to the queue. Okay. Now this is a JavaScript command that works for Fireworks. So what I suggest you do, which is a very common thing to be able to do, if you're getting graphics from your client, especially if it's for a slideshow or if it's a photo gallery, there's a good chance that they don't have their act together, which surprisingly is typically true with most clients when you do work for them. And no offense to that, but be prepared that you might get 50 now, 50 later, 100 now, 100 later, next month, next year, who knows when. So what I'm trying to share with you is rather than go through this whole process again, I can go ahead and save that as a script. So I can actually save this as a script, so therefore I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So before I batch process this, I'm going to say Save Script. And I'm going to call this script. What I typically would do is I tie that script to either a particular project or a particular job, totally up to you. So I'm going to go to the websites, and I'm going to go to my folder. And inside this main folder, I'm going to put Fireworks, SCRIPTS. And I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to give it a certain name. And I'm going to call that what we called it inside of Fireworks, which was 960 by 300 crop. Okay, and save that. Now, that doesn't batch process, that just saves the script, so the next time I want to use it, I can use it. Now, we're going to save the files in the same location as the original, but what it's going to do, Fireworks in its wisdom, it's going to make a backup copy of your original, put it in a folder called Original Files, which I really like. So therefore, you don't have to worry about damaging those original files for the client, especially if they want those original files back before you make changes to them. So based on these choices, we're simply going to hit Batch, and it's going to go through those files. It's going to take a couple seconds to do this. So I'm not even going to pause the video. I'm just going to let this work through, and there you have it. I hit OK based on those choices. So now if I go back to my desktop, and I see that those are the files. So these are the resized files. Notice the file size is much smaller than the originals. Now, where did I put the originals? Did I put it on the desktop? Could anybody tell me where? Oh, we put the originals inside the folder called Originals. So these are large gargantuan file size. Say that 5 times fast. Gargantuan is a technical word, by the way. You might want to take a note on that. So again, these are the files that we're going to use to bring into our Adobe Edge application to build our slideshow. And if I double click, you will see that yes, they are in fact X amount wide. Now, a little trick here. In Macintosh, when you double click a photo by default, it's going to open it up inside a preview. Windows uses a different app. If you hit Command I in Macintosh, you will see, in fact, this is 960 by 300 pixels with a depth of 72, which is web ready. So we're going to now go into Adobe Edge, and I'm going to show you how simple, and I mean simple it is to create a slideshow with the photos that we just resized. Then we're going to take that slideshow and just put it right back inside of Dreamweaver, publish it to the server, and we are done. So now we're in Adobe Edge Animate 1.0, and this is the most current. It's still sort of technically, I guess, a beta test, but this is their live preview, and again, it's free from the adobe.com, I think probably until the end of the year. So if you don't have Adobe Edge, you definitely want to use this, and I have some really cool videos on Udemy already published, and I'll be adding more to it. Adobe Edge basically writes all the code for you in general. There's a couple things that we have to maybe copy and paste some code that it doesn't do by default. and we're going to actually use that today. Now, if you have that handy, you can just copy and paste it, and I'm going to take the lazy way out and do that instead of basically writing it from scratch. So first thing we need to do, of course, is make ourselves a new file. In Macintosh, of course, that would be Command N. Windows, that'd be Control N. Now, by default, here's the file, and I'm just going to take this file and save this, not inside my Documents folder. I'm going to save this inside my website folder. Now, very important step here. Okay, what Edge does is write HTML code, and in the code it includes the JavaScript or whatever animation scripting it needs to basically procure the animation. So we're simply going to call this Edge, or actually let's keep it simple. We'll call it slideshow. If I could learn how to spell slide. You know, there's a free course on spelling on udemy.com. I think there is. Maybe I should have taken that course, or at least a typing course. So I'm going to call that slideshow version 1. Now, what this is going to do here, I'm going to make that lowercase v, is that's going to make a HTML. In fact, notice I have hide extension here. So if I deselect it, you'll see it makes an HTML file. So that's what Edge does. It makes an HTML file with this really, really cool, fun-looking interface here. So I'm going to basically save that. Now, the other stuff over here I don't need. I'm going to close it down. Now, similar to if you worked in After Effects, it basically resized the window similar to After Effects. And this is a timeline-based application. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail on every little nuance of Adobe Edge. My objective here is to basically build a slideshow. So if you want to know more about Edge, of course, then sign up for my full course. But this is just a little teaser on how I work, how I get you involved in the thinking, and how I make learning very, very enjoyable by letting the software do the heavy lifting for me. So the first thing we need to do, of course, just like being in Dreamweaver, is we're going to title this document. This is basically going to do the title bar of our HTML file. So I'm just going to call this slideshow. Now keep in mind something very important. We're not actually going to use this document as the final document, because we're going to take the slideshow and put it into an existing website. So this is slightly different. You could build this totally from scratch. We're going to basically build this little section of the slideshow and then bring that into Dreamweaver. Okay, now based on these choices, of course, we want this to mimic our image size, which was 960 by 300. Okay, now similar to other programs, Command minus, I can zoom in, Command minus, I can zoom out, make a change, save a change. Okay, now this is very important to pay attention to, because what this is going to do, this can write an ID code. Now, this can be very confusing. So we're simply going to change that name to something more understandable by us. So we're just going to call that slideshow 1. Just in case I happen to have a slideshow 2 or a slideshow 3, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now, here's how this program thinks. Okay, it's going to put the assets over here when I go and get them. Here's my timeline, similar to After Effects. Timeline similar to Final Cut or Adobe Premiere, or even Flash. It's a timeline-based application. So the first thing we're going to do here is go to the File menu, because anything about a file is under the File menu, and we're going to import some files. We're going to navigate our way to where the website is kept, or where our files are kept, inside the Add Slideshow. We're going to go into Adobe Edge Originals, and these are the converted files, which I'm going to just view this by date. So I'm just going to pick these files right here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. In fact, here, let's just keep it simple. I'm just going to do let's just do this. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to keep it simple. And I hit OK. Now, what that does, make a change, save a change, is that took those files and it put it right here. Now, these images are cropped, and again, my apologies that, I did start the video by saying I'm not going to pay much attention to exactly how the shot was shot. So as an example, this is probably a better shot to use, but it's just the mechanics behind doing it. Now, if we decide not to use a shot, if that shot disturbs you, we'll just delete it. There you go. Now, I assume the other shots below it are going to work fine. Now, here's a very, very important step. I'm going to make this so incredibly simple to make the original slideshow. It's really going to be this simple. So what I have going on here is this is known as my pin. So what I need to do is pin to the future, pin to where I want something to be. Now my stopwatch is already set up, so the only thing I have to do is hit the letter P for pin. And then I'm going to say, okay, how much of a transition do I want? Now keep in mind something very important here. We're going to use this by default. By default, we're going to set this up to be 1 second, but then we're going to actually write some basic simple code. Now, of course, Edge doesn't do everything for us. But I'm going to share with you how to basically do some simple JavaScript code to basically change it in the increment that we want to change it in. So I'm going to click right here and I'm going to type in 1. So that's going to take us out to the 1 second mark. Now, very important step, what I want to have happen, I want this slide to move off the page. So I'm just going to hold down my Shift key and move this off the page. So it basically wrote the code for me right there. I'm just going to zoom out here for a second. Okay, let me undo this for a second. Just let me zoom out. I just need to get more. Why is this not letting me? Very strange, it's not letting me zoom out here. So let's do this again. So I'm just going to hit the, I didn't realize that the newest version, which I typically don't use the zoom in, zoom out, only for demonstration purposes, but apparently you can go less than 50% here, which is kind of a drag. So I'm going to hit the P for pin tool again, and I'm going to click right here and change that to 1 as in 1 second. Now, if I select this by default, okay, what you have to understand right now is I want this image to come in and basically move into the page, just like that. So every time I move this, this is going to write the animation for me because I have the keyframe set up. Okay, so here's the X and here's the Y. Here's the Y position, here's the X position right here. Right now this is at the 0, 0. So if I hold down the Shift key and I drag this, this is going to drag this to the right. And I can go right off the page. Now, it doesn't matter what number I pick greater than 960 because basically it's going to be off the page and it wrote it for you right here. Now, here's what I want to share with you. If in fact we're going to do this, I want to do this from the bottom up. If I don't do this slideshow from the bottom up, then it's going to cover up itself and you're not going to see anything. Does that make sense to you? If I do this from the top down, then it's going to play this slideshow, and then the next slide, and the next slide, and the next slide in the sequence of the animation. But if you don't build it from the ground up, what's going to happen is going to cover up what I have. So I'm going to undo that for a second, and I'm going to start with this slide right here. Now this slide by default you can't see because it's at the bottom, but I'm going to select this slide. Okay, now again my pin is set to here, so I'm simply going to go to my properties right here, and I'm going to drag this to the right, and as I drag to the right, I'm going to hold down the Shift key. So right there suffices. Now, here's the super simple. I don't need the pin anymore, so I'm going to hit the P key for pin. But I do have to make sure that my playback head is at the end of my animation. So make sure your current time indicator, also known as your playback head, is here. Now what I want to do in addition to that, if I click right here, this is called easing in, easing out. So I want this to ease out in kind of an elastic motion. So I'm going to pick elastic. Now, of course, you can pick whatever you want. Now, here's the simple. So simple, it's frighteningly simple. I'm going to click this timeline, this asset. Now, keep in mind my playback head is right here. And I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to select what I want to affect. Rule number 1 to software. You want to affect something, you have to select something. So I'm going to copy this, Command-C, Control-C for Windows. I'm going to select this, and I'm simply going to paste. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to paste. And I'm going to select this, and I'm going to paste. So basically what's happening here is I've created the slideshow. So it creates this slide, that comes into place, then this slide's going to come into place, then this slide's going to come into place, etc., etc. Now, if you don't want a white background, of course, we can change the color of this to whatever color you want. So let's just change this to black in HTML hexadecimal colors. The command for black is #000. So that's basically black. Now, here's how this works. All I have to do now is hit the return, Command Return. Command Return will take this right out to the web. Now, if this is looking a little bit bigger than 960 pixels, for your benefit, I've basically increased the size of my resolution of my screen for recording this video. So therefore, this video will look perfectly fine on a 29-inch monitor, 27-inch monitor, or a laptop 13-inch, or an iPad. So that's my own. So if it looks a little big and overwhelming, it's not really. It's just that my screen resolution is boosted up so you can see more of the screen on your device. So again, how incredibly simple was that? So all I had to do is hit Command Return. Now, here's what I want to be able to do. Okay, first of all, I don't want this to just autoplay by itself, which I don't have any control over. Now, what I mean by that, very important step here, is I technically do have control over how long this animation goes. But that means I'd have to drag this down to 3 seconds, which then I got to drag this down to 3 seconds if in fact I want to make it be quicker or slower. So here's an alternative to that, and here's what I want to share with you. What I can do is set up different actions. So if you want this to play automatically, it will do that, but you have to set up actions. So by default, I'm going to move my playback head to the end of this slide. And I'm going to click right here, and right there is where I'm going to put an action. So let's just do this again, because I think it went a little too fast for that. So just make sure your playback head is in the beginning, your first video. Okay, so what I want to have happen is I want the first video to play, and then I want it to stop. Now right now it's not stopping, very important step here. When I played this earlier inside the browser, it basically played for that 1 second, then it went to the next second, etc., etc., etc. Now the problem with that again is that that's relying upon the timeline, and if you guys are Flash users from back in the day, you never want to rely upon the timeline for your animation. You basically want to use ActionScript. Well, in this particular case, this program is based on JavaScript. Now that sounds like really scary stuff. I'm just going to copy and paste the code, and I'll make that code available to you, not in the free version, when you sign up for my course. Okay, but I'll share with you how it works, and if you want to look at the screen and copy it, then that's totally up to you. Now, so I'm just going to move my playback head to right there, and right there is where I want to put an action. Well, I have something here called actions. So if I click right there, I can basically just take my action and I can copy and paste. So I put my playback head here, and I click right there, and I simply paste, copy, paste. Now, I don't want to get into the nuances of this, but in a nutshell, what this is doing is talking to the timeline. First of all, it's telling it to stop, and then it's saying to play after 5,500 milliseconds. Now, you're going to say 5,500 milliseconds. Well, I don't have that much time in my life. Well, milliseconds, there's 1,000 milliseconds to a second. So this is basically 5.5 seconds. Now, I'm not going to make this 5.5 seconds. I'm going to make this maybe 3 seconds. So I'm going to change that to, in fact, let's make it 3.5 seconds, 3,500. Okay. Now, here's the really cool part. All I have to do now is close that. And if you know how I work, I'm a lazy guy. I don't like to reinvent the wheel. So I'm just going to take the action and copy it. Therefore, when I go to the next piece of photo, I'm going to paste. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to paste. Etc., etc., etc. So I'm just going to go to the next slide and paste, and the next slide and paste. So therefore, it's going to go here, wait 3.5 seconds, wait 3.5 seconds, wait 3.5 seconds. Pretty cool. So therefore, if the client says, you know, I don't want to wait 3.5 seconds, I want 5.5 seconds, or whatever you want it to be. Now, in my real life course, not to say that this is not a real life course, but my A to Z courses that you'll sign up on Udemy, hopefully, then I will share with you in great detail how you can basically create interactivity, that I can click the slide and pause it, I can click the slide and go, etc., etc., etc. But the objective of this free video is to kind of give you a teaser on A, how the software thinks, and that's my job, but more my style. And my objective is to really give you the skills you need to make money. That's my whole goal, is to give you the skills to make money. Now, that sounds like a very noble thing to do, but I can't tell you how many great projects and very expensive training gigs I've gotten because I taught somebody the right way. They went back to the work and became a rock star. You know, so that happens all the time. So now if I hit Command Return, 1001, 1002, 1003.5, 1001, 1002. Maybe I'm going a little counting a little slow. 3.5. So basically, it's going to hold for 3.5 seconds, and it's going to go to the next slideshow. So in our next video, we're simply going to take that code that Adobe Edge created and put it into Dreamweaver and then publish it to the server. Actually, not our next video, this video. Now, this is almost probably going to turn out to be a 40-minute video. My videos are not that long when you sign up for a course. I keep them short and sweet, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, but I don't want to confuse you here. So I'm basically putting whatever I can into one solid video to make it more enjoyable for you. You don't have to click and drag and go to different videos. So just hang on 1 second. We'll go right into Dreamweaver. Now, we're back inside of Dreamweaver. We already did what we needed to do inside of Edge. We made it very simple. We inserted the graphics. We simply created the timeline and copy and pasted the timeline for as many images as we needed. Then we put in a piece of JavaScript code, which it doesn't technically do by default, and hopefully a newer version of, or a more future version of Edge will do that for us. So here's what we need to do. I'm going to go to File, Open, inside of Dreamweaver, and if I view this by date, this is the files that it created. They created the JavaScript file, they created the JavaScript preload file, created all the files needed. Now, those files would have to be up on your server. Then it also included this Adobe Edge includes. Okay, so that includes the jQuery and the Edge minified version of JavaScript. So this is the file right here that Edge created, and that's the file we're going to open up inside of Dreamweaver. Now, right now you're going to see a whole bunch of nothing because there's nothing here to see unless I publish it to a browser or unless I go into live view. So if I go into live view, you will see that it's going to play the slideshow directly inside of Dreamweaver, which would be the same as posting this file to the web. Now, of course, if you post it to the web, you'd have to include your JavaScript files, all these files necessary to make this animation work. That Dreamweaver is basically required to load those files in order to publish it correctly that Adobe Edge wrote for me. So I'm going to go out of live view for a second. Now, I'm not going to be concerned about the JavaScript files. What I want to pay attention to is this. I'm going to go to the code mode for a second. Now, Dreamweaver Edge, makes this extremely simple. It did all the things you need right here. Okay, it actually, all you have to do to get this to work inside of your Dreamweaver page is to take this and put this inside the head tag and then basically put this inside of the container tag, which we called section. Now, if you physically want to rework this, you could do that. Now, this code is coming from, if you rewind the tape here, the video, I shared with you inside Edge, we changed that wacky number code to something that made more sense to us. So here's how to make this work. We simply take this information, it actually tells you from where to where. We take this, I'm going to copy that, Command C. I'm now going to go to my document, which was inside of Dreamweaver, already in progress. And I'm going to go to code mode, and I'm going to scroll to the top here, and as long as I put this someplace inside the head. So I'm going to put this after the styles in this particular case. So I'm going to say right there, and paste. So again, it's completely dummy proof. Now, the only other thing I need to do is take, this is what's initializing the slideshow. So I'm going to take this div tag, is open and close. Now again, if you want to bring this into Dreamweaver and then convert that, or just take this information and put it inside the section, you can do that as well. But I just want to keep this really simple. So I'm going to take that and copy that. I'm going to go to Dreamweaver. Now I'm going to show you a little technique here. Rather than have to search through code, I'm simply going to take this tag, which is our section tag, and I'm going to select right here. Now the reason I selected it, because therefore when I go to my code, it will put me exactly where I need to go. So I'm going to basically code, and I'm going to take this information from here to here, from here to there, and simply paste. Copy, paste. So if I go to my design mode, and this is the file save, okay? Now, this might be a little confusing, but some of the things here are going to be hidden until you actually either publish to a browser or you get a live view. So if I go to, and this is something you can do in Dreamweaver, under the View menu, if you go to Toolbars and you have your style rendering turned on, which gives this icon up here, and I've done this in a previous free video in this same section of Udemy. If I click right there, that's going to show the markup for this page. Okay. Now it looks like that code is actually hidden, but it's not. It's there. Take my word for it, it's there. And I will prove that by going to Live View. Now in Dreamweaver, Live View is identical to opening this up inside of a browser window, which I'm going to do both. Now I'm not connected to an FTP server to save a little bit of time. I'm just going to launch this locally. But if in fact you were to launch this to your server, you would have to include all those files needed, all those JavaScript files, all the files that were inside this folder that Edge created for you. All those files would have to go up on the server, with the exception of the HTML file, because we copied the code and pasted it into here. So drum roll please, I go to my live menu, and just like that is my slideshow. Now again, in my subs and other videos, I will share with you how I can make this responsive design, which means that as my website gets smaller, the picture will get smaller. Edge will do this for me. So if I basically go out of live mode, I don't actually have to do that, but I'm going to go to the File menu and go to Preview in Browser and show you this in Firefox. Actually, you know what? From a previous video, I forgot. This was connected to the server, so I'm going to basically say no to that for a second. I apologize with that. I forgot that I did have this connected to the testing server. And I just want to save time. I don't feel like uploading those JavaScript files. So what I can do here is I'm just going to go to my file manager, which is under under Window, Files, Command-F opens, Command-F closes. I'm going to click right here to go to my Manage Site. I'm going to go to Server and simply turn Testing Server off. And we did this exercise in a previous video on this section of Udemy, which is some free preview videos I'm doing for you guys. Now again, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, I highly suggest that you go to Udemy to watch the rest of this, because Udemy has some really cool things like taking notes, downloading the file to your computer, etc., that you can't do on YouTube, at least not yet. So I'm going to deselect testing server. I'm going to save that. Now nothing's going to change. It's just going to disconnect it from the testing server. So now when I go to, I don't need this window here, Command-F. Now when I go to the File menu in Preview in Browser, it's simply going to launch this file locally on my computer. And there you can see. Now again, if I resize this, we didn't set that up inside of Edge to resize the graphic, but Edge has those capabilities. So it's really cool. So literally within a couple of seconds, me showing you, it's that simple to create a slideshow. And the only code that we actually pasted in there was the code that I shared with you for the delay, for the timer, that it really doesn't do by default. Hopefully future versions of that will. So this is a very simple way to get a slideshow. So what we did here is we took an existing site, we modified the site to make room for this either new div, or in this particular case, HTML5 friendly tag. Now again, in Edge, we can create navigation buttons, we can stop this, we can play this, etc., etc., etc. Nice photos, how I shot those myself. So I just want to share with you that we basically created the slideshow, we edited the photos inside of Fireworks, we batch process. So if you're going to be a professional with this, guys, you should know all these different softwares, because just like a surgeon, you need to know your tool. So what separates a butcher from a surgeon? Well, guess what? They both cut into sharp knives with a sharp instrument. I'm sorry, they both cut into flesh with a sharp instrument. But a butcher is not a surgeon. So don't butcher your website, don't butcher your Adobe products. Be a surgeon. Take my class. Let me help you every step of the way. This is like on-the-job training. Now, if you want more information about my all-access pass, which is my most economical way to purchase all the software I have on Udemy for all current and all future software updates for life, which means you're going to pay one fee, and 10 years from now, when Dreamweaver comes out with CS, or Adobe comes out with CS16, you're covered with my all-access pass. Now, if you happen to be and just take a smaller course, like maybe just my my After Effects course and my Dreamweaver course, which I have many of them, then you're going to get lifetime access to the site and free updates monthly for the life of that software. So I will talk to you soon. My name is Robert Farrell. Thank you very, very much for being here. Have a good day. Please do something nice for somebody today, because I did something nice for you. So thank you for being here. Have a good day. Carpe Diem 2013. Go Yankees. Go Yankees.